Hello YouTube, today we'll be looking at how to create a lantern in Blender. Our final render will look something like this. This will be the first part in a two-part tutorial series. And in this part we'll be modeling the lantern. Without further ado, let's get started. So go ahead and open up a new scene in Blender. And then go ahead and delete the default cube and go into front orthographic mode by hitting 1 and then 5. At this point, I'll insert a background image of a lantern. You can go ahead and Google this and find whatever lantern image you would like. I chose this kind of older looking lantern. I just found this by searching lantern in Google and using one of the first images that popped out. But you can use whatever image you want. Our first step will be to create a plane by hitting Shift A and then plane, and then delete 3 of the 4 vertices on the plane, and you use the remaining vertice and hitting extrude to kind of trace out the shape of the lantern, the background shape of the lantern. So as you notice, this lantern is a perspective mode shot, which means that we're having to do a bit of guessing here about where our line should go. But just make your best guess. You don't have to follow the design precisely. Nobody knows that you're using this lantern as a reference image. So just kind of go with whatever you want. Be a bit artistic. Take some artistic liberty here. And then once we have the outline made out, go ahead and add a screw modifier and change z-axis to y-axis, and then add a subdivision surface modifier. You'll get something that looks like this. If you want to go back and edit this, you can hit tab again and just edit the outer text, or the outer mesh, and that'll modify the rest of it because of the screw modifier. So once you have your lantern, the top looking as you want, you'll go ahead and apply the screw modifier. Once you apply the screw modifier, there will be some holes on the top and bottom of the mesh. You can close these up by just selecting the vertices around it and hitting Alt-M and then clicking at center. Our next step will be to create the bulb, and we're going to be using a similar process. So at this point I hit Z to go into wireframe mode. Create a plane again, rotate on the x-axis by hitting RX 90 and hit enter. And then with that single point, go ahead and extrude it out to create a bulb-like shape. Once again, this doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to add a subdivision surface modifier after this, so that'll smooth things out. But just create a general bulb shape, as you see that I am doing. So I went ahead, I did that, and I added a screw modifier again. Make sure it's on y-axis, otherwise it'll look funky. And then if you want to change it once again, you can just hit tab and then change these vertices around a little bit. So it looks like I was pretty happy with that. So I went ahead and applied the screw modifier and then closed up the little hole at the bottom. So my next step was to add this bottom pedestal, I guess, that the lantern sits on. So I'm using a similar strategy that I used in the top two, just using a plane and using a point and using the screw modifier to modify this. So those are just some topics on what you use the screw modifier for. I find it very good when your shape that you're modeling is very symmetrical, like this lantern, when you can spin it around 360 degrees and that's how you want it. Yeah, the trick is just make sure that you get the holes out just by hitting Alt-M and merging the vertices at center. That's a big issue with the screw modifier. But other than that, it works great, at least I feel. So it looks like we're getting close to finishing this base. Once again, just do your best estimation. And then hit tab and add the screw modifier. It looks like I'm not quite happy with that, so I'm changing it around a bit, just stretching it out a little bit. You guys can always change your work, it's never set in concrete. So there we go, that's looking quite good. Add the subdivision surface modifier. And then go ahead and, oh, that's a very large hole at the bottom, go ahead and seal that up. Alright, so here's the first part of our lantern. I'll be back in just a moment. Alright, hello YouTube, I am back. Our next step will be adding in these handles to the lantern and the wire that goes over the lantern. So to do that, hit Shift A and then create a path. And as you can see, I'm just modifying that path to more or less mirror this arm-like thing that's on the lantern. And this doesn't have to be precise, but just do your best. You can always modify it later. Just get the general shape. Once again, you can take some artistic liberty with this. As you can see, I have mine a bit lower than the picture just because my model it fits better for that, I felt. So there we go, just modifying the path. Once the path is finished, just go ahead and hit tab to go back into object mode. Looks like I'm making some final adjustments. So yeah, tab to go back into object mode, and then go ahead and hit making some more adjustments. After this, you'll hit Shift A and then add a circle, and the circle is going to be what is around what you're going to extrude along this path to create this handle. So what I'm doing is just modifying the circle slightly just by dragging these points, and to make it slightly more square-like, which fits this handle slightly better. And then I go over to the curve panel and I hit Bevel Object, and I add this object to the bevel object. So the Bezier circle one, Bezier maybe. You can still I'm making some last minute adjustments there too. Once that is done, you can Shift D to duplicate and rotate around the Z axis by hitting R, Z, and then 180 degrees, 180, and then hitting Enter. So it looks like I'm pretty happy with that right about there. In a moment here, I'm going to go back into object mode. Yeah, and then go ahead and hit Shift D, and then rotate there R, Z to transfer into the Z axis and rotate it, and just drag it over to the other side. So that's looking pretty decent. As you can see, I found a little hole here. This must have happened when I was merging the vertices. It looks like I just kind of screwed that up. So it'll take me a minute to figure this out, but what I ended up doing, as you're going to see in a second, was I ended up just deleting all these vertices and kind of starting over. So I just selected all the vertices, hit X to delete, and that left some holes, but I filled those by selecting the vertices that surrounded the circle, and then hitting F to cover that. And then this funny little hole right here, I went ahead and did the same thing. I added a face, and then I ended up using the knife tool to make the face look like the rest of the faces. So that looks a little bit funny, so I just used the knife tool. The knife tool is really great for things like this. It's really good for cutting. Sometimes it's a bit hard because you get in extra vertices and stuff, but it's sweet if you make a mistake, have a hole in your project, you can just use a knife tool to connect the vertices and fix that right up. One thing that can be difficult about the knife tool is you can accidentally hit vertices that you can't even see that are in the background. So just zoom in and, looks like I'm having some trouble there. Just zoom in and then just go from one point to another, and it'll usually work out alright. So there we go. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and just seal this hole up real fast. Also, just when you're merging vertices, a mistake that I made in this project was I should pay more attention to what vertices that I already selected. So just keep that in mind. So you can just modify these vertices a bit. If it doesn't look exactly like the rest, that's okay, simply because this will be the back of our lantern, so we won't really see it in the final render. But go ahead and just make it as close as possible. Hopefully you guys will not make the same mistake I did. Alright, so finish that up. Our next step will be to add this wire to the top. So to do that, we're going to add another path, hitting Shift A and then Path. Tab to go into edit mode and kind of drag it so it fits along this path. Or I should say fits along the wire. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just get the general outline. As you can see, I'm following it pretty precisely. If you want to make something, a little twirl or something, feel free to do that. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just following this pretty straight. If you guys are wondering how I'm extruding this path, it's pretty easy. Just once again, just hitting the E key to extrude. I probably should have gone over that earlier. So once I've finished this path, what I'll do is go ahead and just hit Tab to go into edit mode and add another circle, and then just drag the circle out, and R90 to rotate around, and RX90 to constrain it to the X-axis, and then just go over here and then go to the little curve panel, and then where it says Bevel Object, just select whichever circle you want to have it around, and I scaled the circle a bit to get the right diameter for the wire. So good deal, that's looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same deal with this little hook like thing. And you don't have to be quite precise, but I'm following that pretty closely once again, just because it's the actual lantern. It's good to follow your reference images. So once you're finished modeling that, you just go into object mode again, and then once again bevel object with that same circle that you used for the top wire. And then once again you can kind of scale it as you wish. And just remember, if you're using the same circle to bevel multiple objects, sometimes the diameter for whatever reason will be slightly different. So sometimes it's best to use different circles. Right here I was trying to create a little updent on this lantern. It didn't really end up working, so I ended up just not really using it. But try it out. Alright, so our next step is to add these little wires that are down by the bulb. Not quite sure what these are, but to do that I just went ahead and duplicated the top handle, then deleted portions of it and rotated it slightly. Dragged it around. You can do this, or you guys could have just created another path. That works just as well. So I think these little wires are carry electrical current or whatnot. I'm not quite sure what they do, to tell you the truth. Alright, so once I finish this wire, what I'll do is I'll probably just duplicate it, and then I'll use a similar wire on the other side. So there we go, that's looking pretty good. You can see I duplicate this, and because my point of origin is so far away, it duplicates far out, but just drag it back in. And if you guys ever want to switch the point of origin, just hit Shift Control Alt C, which is one of the longer key shortcuts in Blender, but it's a good one to know. And you can just hit Move Origin to Center of Mass, which will move the origin to wherever the object is. So at this point, I'm adding those little bands that go around the glass, the little metal bands. So I just created a circle, and then I'm going to bevel that circle with one of these circles. And as you can see here, I'm creating another circle bevel with just because I didn't quite like the diameter of that last one. So I'm going to change that. That's even thicker, so I'm going to scale the circle down a little bit. And as you can see, I kind of missed my object because I dragged my object out of the way so I could better see the reference image. So I'm going to drag it back. And then I'm going to select that central loop and just scale it. Scale it a slight bit so it fits more tightly around the glass. A lot of this is personal preference. I personally felt that looked slightly better, so that's what I ended up doing. So our lantern is definitely coming around. We're going to duplicate this little bit, and then we're going to drag it over here. You can just kind of rotate it. If they're not symmetrical, that actually I feel that makes it look slightly more better and more real. So I scaled it just a little bit. There we go. That is our final model for the lantern. So this is wrapping up this tutorial. There's one more thing I have to model, but yeah, I forgot about that little turn knob like thing. So we're gonna model that real fast. We're gonna use a similar using the screw modifier that we used earlier. We're gonna create that point, and then we're gonna drag it over, and we're just gonna create the general outline of this little knob right here. And I'm not even going to try to mess with that text and stuff inside, but just create some sort of little knob-like thing. We're just going to draw the outline, and then we're going to go ahead and rotate it around the z-axis, or around the y-axis, excuse me. Create a nice little knob. So extrude it, hit X to constrain it to the x-axis, and then I'm just making some slight modifications here, and I want to add a screw modifier. And here's something a little funny happened. My point of origin was way out here, so it ended up creating a super wide knob. So to fix that, I just dragged it in until it was pretty good sized, and there it was. And then this was that shortcut I was telling you about earlier. I went ahead and just moved the origin to the center of this by hitting Shift Control Alt C, and then I also just closed up these little holes by hitting Alt M. Alright, yeah, so right here I'm going to move the origin by hitting Shift Control Alt C, and as you can see the origin will snap to the object. So now I'm just going to kind of move the object, rotate it, and kind of scale it down to make it look like it fits with the rest of the lantern. You guys can just modify this. It'll kind of depend how your lantern base looks and how you want this to be scaled, but just do your best to make it look pretty realistic. So wonderful, just kind of drag it in. I was messing around with this for a little while, but you guys can just do it however you wish. Good deal. So this is bringing us to the close of this tutorial. I'll make sure to upload a second tutorial pretty soon, just showing how to texture this lantern and all the materials that you see in that original render. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.